Hello and welcome. This is Angie with thecountryshootcottage.net here today with another Cricut video. So today we're going to talk about the engraving tip that's new to the Cricut Maker. So this is a brand new tool, part of the quick swap housing. So last week I guess we talked about the deboss tip. So the deboss tip and the engraving tip, you can actually use the same housing on both of those and just interchange them. And we talked about what the deboss will do. Now we'll look at the engrave, how it compares with the deboss, and what you can make with both of these tips. So let's start with how you get engraving lines in Cricut Design Space. To use the engrave tool, you'll first need to know how to make an engraved line or shape. So you could draw any line. So I'm just going to pick a score line for our first example. So we can make this any size we wanted to. And then we would go up here to line type and pull down. And you can see a variety of line types. For the engrave tool, we pick engrave. And now that line will be engraved on anything we want to put it on. You can do the same thing with shapes and also even images. So this shape as an example, we can change that to an engraved line type. Now to engrave anything, first of all, we would need something to engrave on. So maybe the star we wanted to put on a piece of material. Well, we could leave it like this. But you might want to cut out a circle and engrave the star on top. So we can pick those, center those up. And now if we clicked make it, you can see the star is on an engrave mat and the circle's on a cut mat. But we wanted the star on top of the circle, right? So we need to pick both of those and attach them together. And now when we click make it, we can see that the star is going to be engraved on the circle that is going to be cut out. Now let's use an image for an example, just so you can see that those work the same way. So I'm just going to pick an image. This works with basically any image, so the only thing you want to be careful about is that the lines will actually be two engraved lines, especially if they're thick. So here's the image we just inserted, and you can see that these are cut lines right now. So if we change those to engraved lines, now you can see exactly what I was talking about. So it'll actually engrave on both sides of a line. So you might need to play with the design of your project to get it just right, to get it wherever you want it. Now, the double lines don't hurt anything at all. If you like this look, then that's fine. But just be aware of that when picking images for your project. All right, now let's take a closer look at how you swap those blades and how you actually put this blade in the Cricut machine. So we had a past video on the deboss tip, and you can watch it. But today we're going to talk about the engrave tip, and we're going to talk about kind of the differences between the two, because yes, they both imprint onto your material, whatever you're using, but in different ways. So this one is the deboss, and then this is the engrave that we're going to talk about today. Now, I have two tips and two housings here, but you would only actually need one housing if you wanted both of the tips. So you just press the button at the top and you can pull the tip off. And then in this instance, I could put the deboss on to one housing. So the tips are sold separately, and then you can buy one housing and all the tips you want to use with that housing. So just keep that in mind. Even though I have two, it actually can be used as one. So for now, let's add the engrave tip to this one and start engraving some materials and seeing what this blade will do. You put your engrave tool into the tool holder side of your Cricut Maker, and then the machine will engrave, and then it will ask you for whatever blade is next. If, for instance, the fine point blade is next, when the computer prompts you, or your phone, then you would change out the engrave for the fine point and then continue on to cut. So now we're ready to engrave on some materials. So what I hope you come away with is what materials are better with the deboss tip and which materials are better with the engrave tip. And you can kind of get an idea. So I'm doing several different materials. You kind of get an idea of which materials work best with which tip, and then you can get an idea for your project and your crafting needs, which of these tips do you need? Do you need both, or do you only need one? So here we go. All right, so this is foil poster board. So on the last video I showed you score versus deboss and what the difference is between those, and then this is a debossed card. Then I tried to use the engraving tip on the same foil poster board. The engraving tip actually tears the paper as it drags it through to do the engrave. So you can see maybe some white areas right there, and that's where the paper is actually torn in different places. So for any kind of foil covered cardstock, actually basically any type of cardstock, I would definitely recommend the deboss instead of the engrave tool, because it just didn't do a very good job. So next up is craft board, and same type of thing. So we did score and deboss, and we talked about the debossed butterfly on this piece of paper. Same thing happened when I used the engrave tool on the craft board. So the paper is actually torn where the engrave tool actually ran around the design. So I definitely wouldn't recommend, again, the engrave tool for any type of cardstock or poster board or craft board, anything like this. It's just going to rip as it goes around instead of actually doing an engraving. So you definitely want to stick with the deboss for those. Alright, next up is acetate. So while the score and deboss, I had a really hard time seeing it on the actual piece that I made. The engrave, however, made a really cool engraved mark that I can see really well actually in the light. So I thought, why not, let's try adding some ink to that. And then we'll wipe away the excess ink, and hopefully it'll be left in those engraved lines, and we can see those really well. So the engraving effect on acetate looks really, really cool in person. So hopefully you can see the etch line now. So I added the ink and then wiped away all the excess, and now it's kind of in those engraved lines. You can really see them on the acetate piece. So that's one idea with acetate and the engraving tip. So the engraving tip is actually not recommended for chipboard, but I gave it a try anyway. So I just used the highest tool leather setting. So you can see a score, a deboss, and then this is the engraving tip as it ran across the chipboard. And as you can see, same type of effect. So it just basically tore it all up as it ran across the chipboard. So definitely not, again, used for chipboard or any kind of cardstock or anything like that. The engraving tip just doesn't work very well. The next up is leather. So if you watched the last video, you'll know that I wasn't very happy with the deboss tip on leather. So it just didn't make a very good impression at all. Like, it's really hard to see. And this is the engrave tip. So the engraving tip did really, really well in the leather. So you can really see the design. So I'm super happy with the way this one came out, and we'll definitely use the engraved tip on leather and not deboss, because I wasn't really happy with that. I plan to run some more experiments with leather and see what all I can do, so stay tuned for a video, perhaps in a blog post on that as well. So then I wanted to try some even thicker materials that I knew that the deboss tip would not work on. So first up is acrylic. So if you've not seen my video, you can cut acrylic with your Cricut Maker, and I'll leave a link for that video in the description below. So I both cut and engraved this piece of acrylic. So you can see the engraving on the acrylic. So next we're going to talk about engraving metal with your Cricut Maker. So if you don't know it, really thin copper can actually be cut with your Cricut machine. So this is a piece I actually cut as well as engraved right on the Cricut machine. Now, I'm going to pull this up as an illustration. So this copper is super thin, almost a little like thick aluminum foil maybe. But as you can see, if I pull it up, it kind of curls. So if you've not seen me cut copper before, I'll leave a link in the description for this video, but you want to use a really light grip mat. And then once you cut it, you want to use something like this spatula to lift your piece up. That way you don't get the same curling effect like I did with when I lifted up the excess. So there's our piece, and there's that gorgeous engraving. So I'm absolutely in love with the engraving job that it did onto the copper. Like it's amazing, you can really feel it. And it's like a perfect piece. So I can think of all kinds of things to do with this. So what I was thinking with this one is perhaps cut a wood piece the same size with the maker and then put that behind here. And then you would have a cute Christmas ornament all within a couple of minutes with an engraving on your copper piece. Then finally we have aluminum. So this is an aluminum sheet and it's painted with a black finish. So it's a 5x7 aluminum sheet painted with a black finish. So as long as it will go through your Cricut, the Cricut will not cut this aluminum, but it will engrave into it with the engraving tip. So I just put down strong grip mat, taped the edges down so nothing would move, and then used that engraving tip to do a nice engrave of my design onto this black. So when you engrave onto the black, you can start seeing the silver of the aluminum show through. So it makes a really gorgeous project. So painted aluminum, definitely can engrave with it and definitely makes a great project idea. So definitely the engrave tip is my favorite for things like leather, metal, copper. I really liked it on the acrylic. The engrave tip is really great for thick materials like that. Now for like cardstock and foil poster board and chipboard and things like that, I'm just going to stick with the deboss tip. So if you are a paper crafter and just want to do like debossing, deboss tip for you. And if you want to stretch your Cricut machine a little bit further into all of those odd materials, the aluminums, the coppers, the acetate, the acrylic, that type of thing, I think you're going to love the engraving tip and all the options it opens up for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions about anything we've covered, questions about the engraving tip, questions about the deboss tip, please ask those in the comment section below. I'm going to drop a ton of links below on all kinds of videos, past videos you can see on the deboss tip and even more, so you can head there. But if you can't find those links and want them, comment below and I will be happy to get them for you. You should also head to our YouTube channel and subscribe because you will love all of our Cricut videos, and I don't want you to miss any of them because Cricut has 2 more blades. So we've covered the deboss, we've covered the engrave, and now there's a wavy and a perf blade that we're going to also cover with videos in the coming weeks, and I don't want you to miss any of those, so be sure to subscribe. So thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.